Let me introduce our panel. To my left, Luis Mirabelli, who is the VP of, they have long titles. The VP of Development for Hispanic America and Caribbean Premium, Mid-Scale, and Economy brands for a small little company you've never heard of called Accor.
That's right. Thank you.
To his left, Gustavo Viescas, the President of Latam Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. To his left, from Arizona, Ron Paul, the President, International Operations and World Hotels for BWH Hotel, otherwise known as Best Western. And to his left, Bojan Kumar, the Regional VP of Hotel Development for the Caribbean and South America for another company you've never heard of called Marriott. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for coming. Let's start out with just an overview, if we can, of the changing landscape, where we were, where we are, where we need to be. In terms of investment, earlier today I sat with a number of government officials about talking about what they were doing to attract investment. What attracts you? What can you do right now? How has the landscape changed in terms of the investment environment, the financing, interest rates? We all hear about inflation and interest rates. How do you manage that? And of course, how have the investors changed? Who wants to start?
I can start.
Go ahead, Luis.
So it's, first of all, thank you very much. It's an honor for me being here, moderated by you.
Thank you.
Big star. Round of applause for Peter. It's biggest star in SAHIC. Now, listen, it's complicated to talk in general because we know that interest rates have complicated the investment all over the places after the pandemic more. But I think that we should need, you have like different planes. You have the markets, you have niches in the markets that behave quite differently. So after the pandemic, I would say that if you go to the segment of leisure, it's one thing. If you go to the segment of business travelers, it's another thing.
And extended stay.
Exactly. If you come to Peru, for example, Peru is just recovering, whereas Buenos Aires or Mexico, it's 20% or more or 30% above in RevPAR. So the complication in terms of investment, I think that we need to treat, focusing in each dimension of this complex equation. So things have changed a lot, but I think that also investors have become more diverse and more creative in the ways that they approach the development in the areas.
Can you give me an example?
Pardon me?
Can you give me an example?
For example, branded residencies. The last, I would say, 5 or 6 properties that Accor have developed in the region from Mexico down below are mixed-use properties. SLS Cancun, M Gallery Tulum, now SLS Tulum, Sofitel Baru. All of these are branded residences and with hotel, SLS Punta del Este, and I can, go with the list. So,
but mixed use itself is not a new development, but it's a new development here.
It's new development. It's new development. It's and I think that it's the only way nowadays to develop to finance a development in the, I would say, upscale luxury segment.
Gustavo?
No, what I would like to add to what Luis was mentioning is that it's a fact that interest rates are not attractive right now for investment. So new construction in some way are limited. There is new construction with loans in a few limited markets. But there are some other creative solutions to find the capital for doing hotels. For example, the condo hotel structure where you go through individual investors to finance your project. There is another example that I really love in Brazil, the fractional business, that it's another way for getting capital for building properties. And it seems that the interest rate at high levels will remain during 2024 and 2025. So we should be more creative and expanding these type of solutions and look for other solutions for keeping the wheel moving.
Ron?
Yeah, I would say a couple things that we saw in 2023, and this is a little bit more global than South America only. First time ever, we had more first-time hotel buyers, individual hotel buyers, than we did institutional buyers. So that changes the landscape a bit. More family office money coming in than in the past because of the lack of debt that was available, as well as the interest rates. And then where is that money being spent, or where are they going? 3 segments: luxury, boutique in the upper mid-scale, and then in the economy in the extended stay segment. So very diverse in how they're investing, but those were kind of the 3 segments of the industry where we've seen the most attention and potential growth.
Well, if they're first time, now you have a challenge to educate them as to how the business works.
Absolutely.
And how do you do that when they've stayed at hotels?
Well, but what you'll find is, while they might be first-time buyers and or owners, they're not necessarily operators. So they're counting on a brand to provide that service for them, because this is potentially their legacy. You're seeing parents handing off the investments to their children. Children are moving into the industry, and they have been for years, but this is the first time it tipped the scale beyond what the investment, commercial investment community
So
was
with all
doing.
those first-time owners, I suppose we're now seeing the growth of a lot of asset managers.
And or management companies.
Yeah.
That's something that we've never done before, but now we got into the management company business because that's what the developer needed to do the deal.
Bojan?
Yeah, we talked about obviously the interest rates, which are still very high. I mean, the way that we combat that is, and our industry is quite unique, is, we can just raise the ADR, and that's what we're doing. So we can, get more on the bottom line. We also talked about the condo hotels, which is very typical for the Southern Cone. We've also have been signing deals, especially in that select service, which has more appetite for the condo hotels, because we all know the difficulties of financing, especially in Argentina, and also the local currency, which is devaluating at a very fast pace. So, for the small business owners, that's kind of a safe place where they put the money. They buy the units, and obviously it's a mandatory participation, and they get some return from that. I would also like to mention that we've also seen very few luxury deals in the U.S., and the big funds and the big investors that have been typically investing in these type of trophy assets around the U.S. are looking elsewhere, and we have seen a lot of interest in the Caribbean region. So obviously, as you all know, the Ritz-Carlton Reserve in Puerto Rico transacted for over $2 million a key. There are a couple of other projects that are in works. So I think that that's going to continue, especially in the Caribbean region and also the Mexican part of the Caribbean region.
From an investment point of view, or an investor point of view, do we have too many brands? Have we lost the definitions? Because I was at a meeting once, a travel industry meeting, and I said, how many brands does Marriott have? I asked the audience, and only one hand went up. And I said, wait a second, hold on. And I said, and who do you work for? Marriott.
Yeah.
I said, and he came up at that time with 32. I may be wrong now. How many is it now?
33.
I said, okay, fine, 33. And then I said, wait, I'm not finished yet. Can you now define them? Can you name them and define them? And he had a problem, right? So I'm sure Hilton I think it's something that's confronting the industry, because everybody's trying to segment out. And your chairman recently, Tony Capone, said he wants to be in every segment. He's not limiting himself, right?
Absolutely. For example, when I say 33, it depends how you're looking at the City Express, right? Because the City Express has other sub-brands in it. But to talk a little bit about it, we don't have every single brand in every single market. So some of the brands are regionalized, right? You know, for example, Protea, you know, we're only in Africa with that brand. You know, City Express, we're only in the Caribbean and Latin America with that brand. What we're trying to do, as obviously Tony mentioned, we want to be in every single segment. And that's the main reason why we decided to purchase the City Express, because we were not competitive in South America, especially in the Southern Cone, because we did not have a bright brand to compete with some of our major competitors in the market.
Does that represent a big change for all of you, that you're targeting certain brands only for certain regions?
Absolutely.
Well, they are following because we have dominated that segment for many, many years, right? And I probably...
Wait, can I ask you a question? How many hotels are you opening every week?
Almost a half.
How many?
A half. 2 every 2 weeks.
Wow. About the same for you guys, right?
We're more than 2 per week.
Yeah. We do more than 1 per week.
You got to get working on your half here.
Yeah,
You need to speed up, Luis.
we're 2 a week globally.
But you're targeting individual brands for individual regions, like you just did in Africa.
Yeah, definitely. And we just undergone a transformation of the group where we divided the segments. We are nowadays premium, mid-scale, and economy brands, which are around 12, 13 brands. And those are organized through 4 regions. We are at the Americas regions. And then the luxury and lifestyle brands are under another umbrella that are focused on the brands, with the idea of keeping, you know, the identity of the brands, and they are run globally. So I think that give us a lot of focus on, you know, development, and we are like dividing what is volume and productivity, which are PME, and exclusivity and uniqueness on the side of luxury and lifestyle.
See, we don't have IHG on the panel today, but I remembered one of their challenges internally was it was again regional issue with Holiday Inn. Go to a Holiday Inn in Mobile, Alabama, and you probably expect to see what you're going to see. Go to a Holiday Inn in Shanghai, and we're talking marble staircases, right? It wasn't, they had gone off brand.
Yeah.
Because that was the owners, correct?
Correct.
Well, but it's different in all areas of the world. In EMEA, you're going to find a mix of Europe. Everything's old, and to get hotels into your brand, you're going to have historic buildings that are never going to meet design guidelines or PIPs or those sorts of things. Go to APAC. Everything's brand new. You know, our Best Western Premier hotels compete head to head with Marriott, which we would never be able to do here or in North America.
Well,
so it's
your secret at Best Western is when you go to Europe. You know, my idea of a Best Western hotel when I was growing up was, you know, it looked like a motel and cinder block walls, and maybe you had the magic fingers in the bed. But you go to your Best Western hotels in Europe, you got castles.
Absolutely.
Under the same brand.
Yep.
So let me talk about something else in terms of ROI, which is a big part of when you talk to your investors. It's the elephant in the room, which comes out of the pandemic. How many hotels that I know of that are only operating at 70% occupancy, they're claiming they're full because they don't have the staff to support the other 30% of the rooms they have on that property? Where does that ROI go then?
Well, it depends on the segment. Again, it's completely different what happens in the economy and the mid-scale segment, which I would say that recover the ROI more easily than the big boxes and on the upper upscale and luxury segment. I think that's what haven't been recovered so far, and it's the challenge, right? You know, in Latin America, I would say that nowadays the only segments that are that you can develop on a relationship between investment And ROI, it's economy and mid-scale because of the ADRs and the occupancy rates.
No, you were asking about talent. It's a challenge for the industry. And not only the challenge is to attract talent, it's also to retain talent. We have an issue as an industry. It's hard to do home office in this industry. And there are a lot of industry, tech industries, a lot of companies that present home office as a benefit, and we cannot do that. So we should find another tools, another way to attract and retain talent. The hotel industry used to be extremely attractive for the people to work, and we lost that part. We should find a way to recover that, again, not only for hiring people, but for retaining people, train them, and render the right experience.
Well, it gets down to training, so let's talk about that for a second, because if you take certain regions of the world, like Saudi Arabia, a majority of the country is under the age of 35 years old. They have an amazing workforce that wants to work, that wants to be trained, and they look at their jobs in the hotels not as jobs, but as professions. And that's, I think, one of the lessons that came out of the pandemic about how many people reassess their position during that period of time. And wait a minute, I don't have a passion for this because I wasn't trained to have a passion for this. And they went off. That was the great resignation or the great migration. So what are each hotel company doing to change your training within this region here in Latin America to make sure that doesn't happen again?
So for example, in some of our luxury and ultra-luxury properties, we work together with the ownership group and we work together with the governments, especially in the Caribbean, to provide the training, right? So to build the training.
And that's
school.
a partnership?
That's a partnership, yes. To actually provide the standards of, let's say, each brand, and to provide to work with the organizations, local organizations, universities, and the local communities. And again, in the partnership with the owners, they provide the facilities, right? So some of the smaller islands, we realized that this is a challenge. So we have to actually work with the local governments, because the local governments would never allow you to actually get, let's say, 50–60% of the workforce from outside. So, but they also understand that the local workforce need the training. So this is really a partnership that starts as soon as we start negotiating management agreement.
And also the other elephant in the room, convincing the owners that so much of that money needs to stay in the community.
Well, but I think the other thing we need to do is, one, we need to attract people to the industry first, which is a challenge because this is a great industry, and yeah, it got some bad raps over COVID times and people leaving the business, but attracting them back is first and foremost, and we need to think about the current and next generation of potential employee, which now, they're asking questions in the interview of what are you doing with regard to sustainability? What are your company values? They're choosing whether they want to come to us. It's not back in the days when I was coming up through the business of, oh my gosh, I want to work for Marriott, I want to work for Best Western, I want to work for the different brands. Now they're selecting which brands really align with what's important to them.
So what you're really saying is the back of the house has become the front of the house in terms of process. People want to know when people flush their toilets where the water goes. They want to know what you're doing to become responsible innkeepers, if you will.
And more so in this part of the world than anywhere else.
And I would like to say we don't say at Marriott that we hire people, but we like to say that we create the opportunities, right? Because people would start at let's say a smaller management property or even franchise property, and then we create those opportunities for people to move up, depending on their experience and the desire to grow within the company. So we have seen actually many of our executives have so many years of experience, and they've started in the hotel operations, but you have to have a passion, you have to have a love for this industry.
The last 3 general managers I've talked to, one started as a night auditor, the other started as a banquet waiter, so he had to take a salary cut to become GM, and the third basically was a room service waiter. Yeah. And they came up through the whole, and one was at Four Seasons, and one was at Marriott, and one was at Hilton. I mean, and you should be celebrating those people as examples in terms of your creating those opportunities. So what is the dynamic now in terms of ROI in general? Because you've got your challenges, inflation, interest rates, shutting off the faucet a little bit in terms of financing. Earlier today, I was talking to the government folks about what incentives they're offering. What incentives do you want? And what incentives have you gotten to make the difference between a hotel that you could finance and open and a hotel that you couldn't?
Yeah, first of all, you need to think of putting in the shoes of the investor, because there are different investors, and motivations are completely different. So it's case by case.
There's no manual.
There is no manual, there is no rule. In some cases, you can work financially. In other cases, is how can we help you to reposition what you have, because you don't have the money to upgrade the property or maintain the property. How can we help you? In other cases, is it's case by case, complicated. It's a challenge.
Can each of you think of an example where, in a very creative way, as it's case by case, you worked with a local government, a local community, or a state government to be able to make a hotel happen where it couldn't happen before? Bojan.
Yeah, so for example, I'd like to mention one example in South America and then one example in the Caribbean. In South America, we all know that, for example, Colombia was offering 20 years tax incentives for a long period of time, and that's when we really saw a big boom in the hotel inventory in Colombia. We were riding on that wave for years, and were able to sign so many projects in Colombia. Currently, there are still incentives that the government offers in Colombia, but then the example, for example, in the Caribbean, after the hurricanes Maria and Irma, it was actually a very, very long and painful recovery for Puerto Rico. And then they've introduced these tax incentives where, for example, the hotel developers, if their project is approved, could actually elect different ways to get the tax incentives. And I'm talking about the taxes, those incentives.
When you say different ways, can you explain?
Yeah, so there are different percentages that they could actually choose to participate. So, for example, they can take 10% at signing of the agreements. So I'm talking about the 10% of the project cost. They can go up to like 30%. Usually 30% is after the first year of operations, where practically those incentives are sold in the U.S. and the equity comes in towards the project. We all know what's going on in Puerto Rico now. There are many developers from mainland U.S. They're actually fighting for these incentives. They're looking for every available site in Puerto Rico. We've signed a couple of recent deals, and when you think about it, they purchase the land. Let's say land is valued at 15–20%. They go with 30% tax incentives. So we're talking about almost 50%. They put like a little bit over 5% of their own equity from the additional equity for the construction, and you have 50% loan from the local banks.
Well, does Puerto Rico then become the role model for other destinations?
I think it is possible. I think something like that could be replicated in Dominican Republic, but I already think that there's a lot of interest in DR for different reasons. Mainly infrastructure, because DR is a country where relatively small country with 7 international airports. So wherever you fly, it's easy to get to. DR was mostly known as an all-inclusive destination, which since the international brand came in, we've started changing that perception for the mostly North American travelers.
Is there a Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton in the Dominican Republic?
So we've signed the Ritz-Carlton, the all-inclusive, which is going to be the first all-inclusive Ritz-Carlton in Dominican Republic, actually in the Caribbean, the Ritz Reserve as well.
How do you define an all-inclusive Ritz-Carlton? I want to hear that.
I would say barefoot luxury. So we're working on obviously on all of the brand standards for the Ritz-Carlton all-inclusive. We decided to enter into that luxury segment because there were no competitors in that segment, and we saw that we could really pioneer that experience in that segment. It is not really about the brand. It's all about the experience. It's all about really booking the vacation. All-inclusive, it's all about the booking your vacation and really not worry about anything else. Because when we did, before we launched the all-inclusive brands, we did a market study, and we've discovered that actually about 40% of Bonvoy members, 45% of Bonvoy members were staying in all-inclusive hotels. And they were complaining about the product, they were complaining about the service, but they liked that it was all-inclusive. They liked that they could book in advance, and we said, perfect, we know what you want, we're gonna offer you something at, higher level.
Okay, I gotta ask this question. It gets down to the definition of all-inclusive. Because as a journalist, I get angry all the time, because every time I see an advertising for all-inclusive, it's followed by an asterisk. And the asterisk is the acknowledgement that it's not all-inclusive, right? So that you're paying for certain brands, you're upselling. If you're Ritz-Carlton, and everything is by definition a luxury item in that hotel, are you telling me it's all-inclusive?
In the terms of the F&B, absolutely. But there's still going to be certain items that guests will have to pay, such as, for example, spa treatment.
Of course, yeah. Have you seen a change in that in terms of all-inclusives?
I think so. There is a variety of all-inclusive in all the segments. We even have a hybrid all-inclusive with Fairmont in Mayakoba. You have a program that is all-inclusive and a regular EP.
And no fights break out in the buffet line?
No, because they are separated.
Let me talk about something else that happened in terms of hotel development. Two things. We talked about it earlier today with the government officials about infrastructure. You can't develop a hotel without a partnership with the local community to give you the infrastructure that you need. Roads, sewage, waste management, sustainability, telephones, electricity. I mean, are you getting the cooperation that you need? Is that a no?
It depends on which country. I believe that in the DR, we do. We see a huge collaboration between public and private. Sometimes at different speeds, but I believe that DR is a good example in which it happens. There are other countries, and I will speak about Argentina, my country, that is not happening. The public sector is focused in different matters, and all the investment, there is not a huge amount of investment, it's focused on the private side.
So what you're saying to me is that the Minister of Tourism doesn't talk to the Minister of Finance.
The Minister of Tourism...
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a problem.
That's a problem.
It is a problem.
The focus is on the cost, you say it.
And then, even if you get a very attractive loan deal and a very attractive tax deal, in the example that you gave in Puerto Rico, you're still dealing with supply chain issues, right? How do you get the materials there to be able to build that whole hotel and open it on time? Where would you say in this region you're opening on time, and where in this region are you not because of that?
I think everything's behind right now, to be honest with you. We have more luck in Mexico than here, but everything is at least 3 to 6 months behind, is what I'm finding.
Gustavo?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what he said. Yeah.
So it's no longer an issue?
Yeah.
That's great. All right, so now I'm going to ask each of you to answer this question. That is, what's the one lesson in the last 2 years as we emerged from the pandemic that you weren't expecting to learn but had to learn about moving forward in terms of financing and investing?
Very good question. I would say that, again, each situation each market is different. I think that we need to analyze each case thinking as the owner, as the investor, and what motivates them. And the pandemic taught us a lot, but again, development depends on fundamentals. And in Latin America, we have many countries with different niches and different segments that we need to, approach individually. And
All right, so let me expand that in that question. Is there a country that you would not have wanted to develop a hotel in 2 years ago that you're actively developing now, and reasons why?
I think that there are, countries that we are currently focusing
That you weren't 2 years ago?
that we probably were more open in the past and develop. Nowadays, we are more focused on the ways we develop, if it is franchise, if it is management, if it is, we are adding new tools like all-inclusive. That
But you didn't mention the country.
countries, I would say Mexico, I would say Dominican Republic.
That's 2 years ago. And now?
No, nowadays.
Nowadays.
Nowadays, I would focus in Mexico, Colombia, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica. There is 90% of my energy right now.
Gustavo?
Yeah, I agree with Luis in which each country, it's an individual case study, and even each of our companies has different positions also in these countries. Accor, for example, is extremely strong in Brazil, and different positions in the rest of Latin. So each one of us has a specific situation in each one of the countries. For naming a couple, Mexico, DR, Costa Rica, but those are Brazil, those are the big ones, but there is opportunity in all the countries. 50% of the hotel industry, it's on independent hands, that they need new tools, they need access to new technology, new distribution channels. So it's hard to name a couple of countries, but there is opportunity in all of them, for sure, at different levels. You should find more opportunities in Mexico and Brazil than in Peru or Colombia or Chile. But there is opportunity in all the countries. Let's talk about El Salvador. El Salvador, it's
El Salvador 2 years ago, nobody would touch it.
Exactly. And now
And today?
we start seeing the numbers of El Salvador, what El Salvador is doing. But do we find the same number of opportunities in El Salvador and in Mexico? No, for sure, due to the scale of the market. But there are also opportunities there.
Ron?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, with the strength of the industry that came back with high occupancies, very high ADRs, way beyond what we ever thought, I would have thought that lending would have been more available now. And it's actually gone the other way with interest rates and everything. We're more of a conversion brand than we are new construction across from luxury down to economy. 2 years ago, we were not focused on Brazil. Mexico was job one and getting all of our brands represented there. We had actually, in the past, shut down some legal entities that we had in Brazil because we didn't think there was going to be opportunity short term. We've now reopened those and are very active in trying to grow in that market. But like was said, the smaller, Peru, coming out of this meeting last year in Colombia, said, you know what, there's opportunities here, and we're actively talking in all of these smaller markets.
Ojan?
Peter, I would use the word flexibility, and I would use also, what we've done is also, we've done quite a impressive strategic planning, right? In the terms of, budgeting and long-range plan, assigning certain amount of capital towards certain regions, right? So obviously, we've been knocking on the door of the Treasury every budget season and saying, we need this much money. And we understand that the financing is difficult, but what we've been doing is we have been supporting the owners when obviously we're pitching for a deal, and to be able to enhance those financing in terms of like using Marriott's balance sheet. We for the certain deals we're offering substantial amount of key money in order to get the management agreement. We're willing to, and we have done in the last couple of years, provide the senior debt guarantees. We've done, in the certain very strategic deal, even operating profit guarantees. We provided a mezz loan. So yes, I mean, luckily Marriott has a healthy balance sheet, and we can actually compete that way in order to get the deal, right? But obviously it has to be a strategic deal for us.
You realize, of course, you now set the precedent. Can't go back now.
Yeah.
We are out of time, ladies and gentlemen. Please thank Bojan, Ron, Gustavo, and Luis.